A big win for airline travelers. The Supreme Court of Canada has dismissed an appeal by a group of airlines that challenged the Passenger Bill of Rights. To talk about this, we're joined now by air passenger rights advocate Gábor Lukács. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
So can you give us a little bit of context what this legal challenge was all about even?
In 2019, Canada promulgated the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, which is a poor man's imitation of the European Union's gold standard for passenger protection. But Canadian Airlines didn't want even that. The concern from the airline's perspective was that one day Canada would have a proper passenger protection regulation like what the European Union has. So the airlines were challenging Canada's ability to enact regulations that would provide consumer protection to passengers traveling to and from Canada, traveling internationally. The airlines argued that the APPR was inconsistent with Canada's international obligations under the so-called Montreal Convention, the international treaty at hand. The Supreme Court of Canada dismissed that challenge, holding that the Air Passenger Protection Regulations is a consumer protection scheme to provide standardized compensation to passengers, not a case-by-case compensation, and as such, it was not covered, not preempted by the international treaty. The airlines were arguing that the international treaty was the entire source of passengers' remedy for monetary compensation, and the court dismissed that argument.
Okay, so does this ruling then actually change or improve anything?
This ruling actually ensures that Canada is able to have passenger protection regulations with respect to international flights. It breathes new life into the efforts, into the initiative to revamp Canada's current quite problematic passenger protection regulations and bring them in line with the European Union's gold standard.
So the airlines, do you think they'll appeal this again?
To my knowledge, there is no future appeal beyond the Supreme Court of Canada. The days when you could appeal to the Privy Council are long gone. In terms of divine intervention, I cannot speak to that.
Okay. So do you have any concerns around the enforcement, how it will be enforced at all?
Well, that's part of the problem, that these regulations have been in place for the past 5 years, so they're nothing new. Just that the Supreme Court of Canada refused to strike them down. The court upheld those regulations. And the problem is that they have not been enforced properly or at all by the federal government. Last year, Parliament passed legislation that would allow to increase the fines imposed on airlines that break the law by a tenfold factor. But the government did not make the regulations corresponding to giving force, giving effect to those higher fines. So it seems that there is a will from Parliament to fix the situation. Certainly that's what we are seeing from the legislation. But when it comes to the government is sabotaging and Parliament's will. It is not enforcing the laws as written, and in many ways, it feels as if the airlines were governing the government and not the government the airlines.
Yeah, we certainly run a lot of stories here or have discussions with air passengers who are having difficulty in getting any kind of recourse in certain situations. So what would you like to see happen? I guess any other additions or changes that you're advocating for?
I would like to see Canada adopt the European Union's gold standard, where compensation for flight delay, cancellation, denied boarding are owed as a matter of course, as a norm, and the airline has to show that there were extraordinary circumstances in the nature of volcanic eruption, act of terrorism, the grounding of aircrafts of the same model all across the continent, before they can avoid paying compensation to passengers. I would like to also see denied boarding defined the same way that is defined in the European Union. If you show up at the airport with a valid ticket, valid travel documents, they don't get you on the plane, that's denied boarding. That's not how Canada defines it, unfortunately, and therefore many passengers who are in fact denied boarding in Canada are losing out on compensation. I also would like to see that passengers who are delayed or canceled, if they're canceled and have to have an overnight stay, would get accommodation, meals, and so on, regardless of what is causing the delay or cancellation, to avoid this fruitless debate every time, even about hotels and meal vouchers when the disruption happens.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good one there for sure. All right, well, thank you so much for your time today. That's Gábor Lukács. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.